What if the Straw Hat in One Piece was never just a keepsake, but a carefully preserved legacy tied to an 800-year-long plan? This discussion explores the hidden meaning behind the Straw Hat's journey, from Joy Boy to Roger, from Shanks to Luffy, and the shocking possibility that its true purpose goes far beyond symbolism. By connecting the frozen giant Straw Hat in Marijoa, the concept of sealed hockey, Poseidon's vulnerability, Roger's laughter at Laugh Tale, and the mystery of arriving too early, this theory reframes the Straw Hat as a bridge between eras, wills, and destinies, waiting for the exact moment when the world is finally ready to move forward. Alright, before we dive any deeper and keep this anime storytelling journey alive together, make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments so the hype doesn't die down. Now then, let's get right into the discussion. Let's roll. For a long time now, it's been clear that Shanks is fully aware of the existence of the giant Straw Hat frozen and hidden inside IMU's secret chamber. Based on what has been revealed so far, Shanks once spent a considerable amount of time living in Marijoa, where he likely learned many of the world's deepest secrets, ranging from IMU's true identity, certain devil fruits, the Holy Knight's agreements, to other mysteries Oda has yet to unveil. One undeniable fact is that the Straw Hat itself holds an incredibly important position in the world of One Piece. Nearly every major figure in the story is connected to it in some way: Joy Boy, Roger, Shanks, and eventually Luffy. Even Luffy's crew is named after that very hat. The appearance of the massive frozen Straw Hat in Chapter 96 only reinforced the idea that this object is far more significant than we previously imagined. Over the years, Luffy's Straw Hat has naturally become the subject of countless theories. And honestly, that's expected in a story written by Oda. Some believe the hat is a map leading to the One Piece, others think it's Joy Boy's crown, while some speculate it contains hidden power or even a devil fruit. The key point, however, is that while both Luffy's hat and the frozen Straw Hat in Marijoa are important, they don't necessarily serve the same purpose or carry the same meaning. If we start with Luffy's Straw Hat, it's worth noting that Oda had already conceptualized its role even before One Piece officially began. In Romance Dawn versions 1 and 2, the core themes of the story were already present. Early drafts featured Luffy, Shanks, Nami, and an antagonist very similar to Buggy, with a storyline not too different from what we know today. In those versions, Shanks gives Luffy the Straw Hat and explicitly calls it his most precious treasure. The moment when Buggy damages the hat is especially important, because it marks the first time Luffy truly loses his composure in anger. The same idea appears in the first Romance Dawn, where Luffy's expression instantly changes when the enemy steps on the hat. In Romance Dawn version 2, Shanks doesn't appear, and his role is replaced by Garp. Despite the different context, one thing remains consistent: Luffy considers the Straw Hat to be priceless. This alone shows that the hat's meaning goes beyond just the bond between Shanks and Luffy. That's why theories claiming the hat is a literal map to the One Piece, or that Shanks only wants it returned for some hidden function, feel less convincing. Oda clearly had a different idea from the very beginning. Unlike the frozen Straw Hat in Marijoa, Luffy's hat has no special powers and isn't a key to some secret treasure. Giving it a hidden ability would honestly feel excessive. Luffy is already heavily favored by the narrative. Instead, the true meaning of the Straw Hat is far simpler, yet far stronger. It represents bonds, care, and human connection. Many people treasure ordinary objects because of the memories and emotions attached to them. For Luffy, the Straw Hat isn't just a hat. It belonged to Shanks, the man he admired, and it symbolizes his childhood, his dreams, and the reason he chose the path of a pirate. That's why Luffy is willing to risk his life to protect it. At the end of Romance Dawn version 2, Oda even includes a line from Garp stating that true treasure isn't diamonds, gold, or pearls, and that one day Luffy will understand this. The Straw Hat embodies trust, bonds, and affection. Not just anyone is allowed to wear it, only people with a deep emotional connection to Luffy, such as Nami, Robin, Usopp, and Tama. Even small details reinforce this theme. When Luffy first meets Buggy, Buggy hates the Straw Hat because it reminds him of Shanks, and he deliberately damages it. Yet later, in Impel Down, they fight side by side. Then at Marineford, it's Buggy who ultimately returns the Straw Hat to Luffy. Another subtle detail is that Luffy keeps Ace's Vivre card inside the hat. These small moments remain consistent, even if not everyone is satisfied with a grand mystery resolving into a theme centered on friendship. Now let's shift to the frozen straw hat in Marijoa. Unlike Luffy's hat, this one seems to carry more than symbolic meaning. It likely holds real power. Many theories suggest it belonged to Joy Boy, a giant, an ancient weapon like Uranus, or that it was Joy Boy's crown. From this perspective, though, those ideas don't quite fit. If Joy Boy truly parallels Luffy, it's unlikely he would wear a crown or embrace symbols of authority. Luffy himself has no desire to rule anyone. All he wants is freedom. That's why the idea of the frozen straw hat being Joy Boy's crown preserved by IMU feels implausible. There must be a reason IMU chose to store it rather than destroy it. Just like Luffy's hat symbolizes bonds, the straw hat's journey through history also follows relationships. Roger passed it to Shanks, Shanks passed it to Luffy, and Luffy only lends it to those he deeply cares about. But this isn't the only path the straw hat has taken. Ace, for example, wore a very similar hat, which opens the possibility that the straw hat's meaning extends far beyond a single lineage. Ace once made a straw hat for Oars Jr., the small giant known as the Sun God's child, because of their close bond. Interestingly, Ace learned how to make straw hats in Wano from Otama. Without that knowledge, Oars Jr. might never have worn a straw hat, never joined Whitebeard's forces, and may not have played his crucial role during the Marineford War to save Ace. What makes this moment even more powerful is that Oda emphasized how difficult it was for Ace to make a straw hat due to the limitations of his Flame fruit. Despite those challenges, Ace still succeeded. Beyond that, straw hats appear across multiple eras. In Nolan's flashback, a child can be seen wearing one over 400 years ago. Even in recent chapters, a member of the Davy clan at God Valley is shown with a similar hat. All these clues point toward one conclusion: the straw hat tradition likely originated directly from Joy Boy, and its meaning has remained unchanged for over 800 years. Every straw hat carries the same message, but one stands above all others: the giant straw hat frozen in Marijoa. So why is that particular hat so special? In chapter 968, the Sea Kings speak of two sovereigns, clearly referring to Joy Boy and the one who can communicate with them directly, Poseidon, known today as Shirahoshi. Roger overheard this conversation, learning that Poseidon would be born 10 years later and would need 15 years to mature. They also foretold that these two sovereigns would meet again, a prophecy fulfilled through Luffy and Shirahoshi. At that moment, Roger realized someone would eventually surpass the Roger Pirates. They had arrived too early. This leads to the theory that Joy Boy once gave a straw hat to Poseidon 800 years ago as a symbol of friendship. But that hat was more than just a token. Shirahoshi, as the current Poseidon, is physically one of the most fragile characters in the story. Her power is overwhelming, yet she herself has almost no defensive capability. In game-like terms, her attack stat is maxed out, but her defense is nearly zero. In a massive war, protecting someone like that while battling powerful enemies would be almost impossible, no matter how strong the protector might be. Even Joy Boy himself, despite his overwhelming strength, still had a true nemesis, IMU. In a world like that, Poseidon could easily become the target of a covert attack, even by someone far weaker than Joy Boy. That's why the idea emerges that Joy Boy entrusted his strongest haki to the straw hat, sealing it within and giving it to Poseidon as an absolute form of protection. We've already witnessed how terrifying high-level haki can be. When Shanks stepped onto Whitebeard's ship, the sheer pressure of his haki immediately affected the crew and even damaged the vessel itself. Now imagine that same phenomenon, but amplified to the absolute peak: Joy Boy's strongest haki. At Egghead, Oda introduced the concept of Joy Boy's haki bonds. A portion of his Conqueror's haki was sealed inside the ancient giant robot, locked away through a knot-like mechanism that could be released under specific conditions. Once unleashed, its impact was extraordinary. The shockwave traveled far beyond Egghead and even cancelled the devil fruit transformations of the Gorosei, forcing them to retreat back to Marijoa. Imu's reaction made it clear: this power left deep psychological scars. Then it's almost certain he gave something similar, if not far greater, to Poseidon, the most vital yet most vulnerable figure on his side. And it's hard to believe that what Poseidon received was only a small fragment. So why did Oda introduce the concept of haki knots in the first place? Clearly not just to push the Gorosei out of Egghead. This idea is groundwork for a far larger conflict down the line. A single ancient robot was the only recipient of Joy Boy's haki legacy. We don't know the full composition of Joy Boy's crew, but when compared to Luffy and the Straw Hats, a clear pattern emerges. Characters like Zoro, Sanji, or Jinbe may not need Luffy's haki. But if someone like Frankie were to receive it, then it becomes highly likely that others could as well. And if we're talking about who would need Luffy's haki the most in the final war, the answer is obvious: Shirahoshi. Poseidon isn't like Pluton. Pluton is most likely an indestructible warship that doesn't require protection. Poseidon, on the other hand, is a human being who embodies an ancient weapon. The Sea Kings can protect her, and perhaps a few powerful fighters as well, but in a world dominated by devil fruit abilities, fully safeguarding someone like her is nearly impossible. Luffy's battle against Kizaru perfectly illustrates this. Luffy won, but the fight was extremely difficult because he had to protect Vegapunk at the same time. Now imagine a similar situation, except the enemy is Imu, or something even more terrifying. This leads to the conclusion that the giant frozen straw hat in Marijoa most likely belonged to Poseidon 800 years ago, and within it lies Joy Boy's strongest haki. That would explain its massive size. It would also explain why Imu was holding Shirahoshi's photo before entering the freezing chamber. Imu cannot destroy that straw hat. If its seal were ever broken, Joy Boy's haki would awaken once more, and its release could be catastrophic, potentially wiping out Imu, the Gorosei, or even Marijoa itself. It's possible that the haki is so powerful that the hat itself is indestructible. That's why it was frozen, to suppress and neutralize its power. The world government may have used the same method on ancient giants as well, choosing to freeze threats instead of destroying them. Imu's trauma in response to Joy Boy's haki shows just how desperate they were when they finally believed they had contained the last remnants of Joy Boy's power inside that hat. As mentioned earlier, Shanks lived in Marijoa for years. He knows about Imu, secret contracts, the Nika Devil Fruit, and countless hidden truths. It's almost impossible that he never discovered the freezing chamber. If Sabo was able to hide and witness Imu firsthand, then Shanks, who had far deeper access, certainly could. As a master-level haki user, Shanks would have sensed the overwhelming aura emanating from that place. From the very beginning, he knew the straw hat was never just an ordinary hat. And when the Nika fruit chose Luffy, Shanks immediately understood that this was the person they had been waiting for all along. That's why he said he was betting everything on Luffy. And here's another possibility: Nakama. The straw hat may also serve as a kind of signal for Roger's former crew throughout Luffy's journey. Anyone who once sailed with Roger and sees that hat instantly understands that they must help Luffy and his crew. Just look at Crocus, Skopper, and others. In short, the straw hat in One Piece has become a symbol of bonds, trust, and even a kind of talisman. There is only one exception: the giant frozen straw hat in Marijoa. That one is different. It is believed to house Joy Boy's strongest haki and is destined to play a massive role in the future. If it's ever confirmed that the D stands for dawn, and the straw hat represents the rising sun, that would be yet another insane layer to Oda's storytelling. And for those who made it this far, there's one more reason why Luffy's straw hat is so important. For years, there's been one massive question: why did everyone have to wait exactly 800 years? What happens 800 years after the Void Century? Specifically, it connects to one of the most important post-time skip panels, when Roger's crew arrives at Laugh Tale. That's where the Void Century's history is revealed. That's where One Piece is found. That's where Roger becomes the Pirate King. Yet all of this is shown only briefly, without explanation. We see nothing but their reactions. The reason is obvious. Oda doesn't want to spoil a moment meant for the true protagonist of the story. But that creates an even bigger question: why were they laughing? Ironically, that detail receives enormous focus, while far more critical mysteries remain unanswered. What is One Piece? Why was it left there? Where exactly is Laugh Tale? How do you reach it? Why hasn't anyone stumbled upon it by accident? And why was Roger too early? All of those questions are brushed aside, yet the laughter becomes iconic. That's strange. What makes it more interesting is how many parallels exist between Gaiman and Roger. Both are pirates. Both chase treasure using maps. Many characters fit that description, but there's more. Both reached the end of their journeys. Both arrived at their final destination. And that moment marked the end of their pirate careers. Both were also forced to wait 20 years after reaching that point. Roger didn't have that time, but he knew with certainty that he was exactly 20 years too early. Imagine spending years exploring the most dangerous seas in the world, only to finally arrive and realize the treasure hasn't arrived yet. They were 20 years too early. That's also why Roger's crew didn't take One Piece. Not because they chose to leave it behind, but because they never found it. One Piece begins with Roger claiming he left his treasure behind for anyone to take. And only now has the time come. That's why Shanks waited. And why he began acting only after Luffy awakened his devil fruit. So how could One Piece not exist? Here's the twist: it wasn't taken, it hadn't been placed yet. 800 years ago, the ancient kingdom created an absurdly complex security system to protect One Piece. They hid it, turned it into the most difficult treasure hunt in history, and ensured it could not be found before a specific time. One Piece was sent 800 years into the future using the power of the Toki Toki no Mi. What Roger's crew discovered were poneglyphs explaining that the treasure had not yet arrived. And they had Lady Toki herself to confirm that such a thing was possible. It's also likely that One Piece wasn't the only thing sent forward in time. One or more of Joy Boy's crew, or other crucial figures, may have done the same. And this is where Luffy's straw hat becomes crucial. When people from Joy Boy's era, those who lived 800 years ago, see a straw-hatted pirate reach One Piece, they will know without doubt, this is the one they were waiting for. That doesn't mean the hat alone decides everything. Shanks, Teach, and Buggy still have their chances. But the straw hat will be the final confirmation. Whitebeard's words to Teach, that he was not the man Roger was waiting for, may not have been metaphorical at all. It's entirely possible that, at Laugh Tale, someone truly has been waiting for 800 years. Vav. That's really interesting. Big thanks to everyone who stayed all the way to the end. If anything's on your mind or you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. Appreciate you for watching, and catch you in the next videos.